So today I apologize once again because I'm going to treat you as if you were from the Free State, but you're not. And I'm talking about voting. I'm talking about elections and so on. So don't worry, I'm not going to tell you, give you names. It's not my duty to give you names, but it is my duty to tell you what are the principles behind voting and elections, so that you know that when you go there, you act as a Catholic and not as a pagan or an enemy of God. So there are rules that should be followed under pain of sin. And now let me explain. First of all, the foundation of elections and the duties of Catholics in this matter. We must understand that society, civil society, as it is built, is necessary for us, for each one of us. It is necessary because we all need to get something from someone else. It is very rare that we are totally independent from the rest of the world. What does it mean that we're totally independent from the rest of the world? Well, it means not only that you grow your own food, but that you also make your own dress, clothing, you make your own shoes, and the rest that you need for your own life. The paper on which you write, the pen that writes upon it, and so on. If you can do all that, you are independent from the rest of the world, so you can say, well, I don't care. But if you don't do all these things, you depend on someone else who can do it. Now can sew your clothing, make your shoes, and so on. So society is necessary because people help each other in what they cannot do by themselves. You understand? So if it is necessary for the individual has a duty to make sure that that society that is necessary to him works properly. Because if the society works properly, then the individual gets a profit out of it. If it doesn't work properly, if society does not work properly, then the individual suffers, so there's no point. Because it is necessary for us, we have to make sure that we do our best so that it works the way it should. You see what I mean? I hope so. What happens is that society, people get together and they help each other in an orderly manner. Because if there is no order, it's chaos. And people end up eating each other, as they do in some places around the world. And I'm not going to say where. You'll find it out. But in order to perfect ourselves, society has to work properly. And each one of us has a duty, greater or smaller, according to the place we have in society, to take care not only of our own good, but to take care of the good that is called the common good, what is good for everyone. The common good is the purpose that everyone should achieve. You see? I simplify a lot because there's a lot of philosophy behind all these things, but I simplify it because otherwise we will go on forever and I need to have my dinner. So the common good is what everyone is trying to achieve. It's the purpose that we all share. And what is the purpose that we all share? It's to save our soul. The common purpose for every single human being is to save his own soul. So everything should aim directly or indirectly to the salvation of souls. What we do as individuals and also what we do as a society. Society should work, the government should work for the salvation of the souls of the people under the government itself. That is the ultimate end. Then they can organize the days when the rubbish is collected, and they can organize different things. Of course they can. But ultimately, they should think that everything they do ends to the salvation of the souls of the people who are subject to them. Now, in ancient times, people had kings and queens and emperors. You still have a king, of course, but it doesn't really work as it did before. It's just there to get the money and enjoy all the privileges. Fair enough for him, and all is fine. But in ancient times, the king decided everything. He was the lawmaker, he was the judge, he was the chief of the army, and he directed the whole state, the whole nation. And that was given to the people by God himself. Not the king by virtue of God, by the grace of God, the king of, or the queen of. Nowadays, in most places and nations, people like you have the power to elect, appoint in different manners those who will be in power and decide where the nation is going. So it is up to you to make sure that those who are elected are promoting the salvation of the souls of the people subject to them. Simple as that. You are we are all part of a greater entity, a greater body, and as parts of this body, we all have to work for the benefit of the entire body, which reflects then on the benefit of the parts. Like the body that you have here on earth, is made up of many organs, and they all work together. Then imagine your liver or your kidneys, they work. And by the fact that they work, they allow other organs to work. Like the heart. And the heart sends the blood to the kidneys or the liver so that they may work. It's reciprocal. They help each other. And by helping each other, they help the whole. It's the same thing then for the nation, for the civil society. Each individual has to have in mind that he's part of a greater body and has to do everything in his or her power to make sure that this body works properly. I'm not making it up. Of course, this is common philosophy and also doctrine that has been given to us by the popes for centuries. And I will read for you some quotes from the popes themselves. So it is to be understood clearly that each one of us has a duty to make sure that everything is done so that those people who would work for the benefit of the whole would be elected. So that those people who would work for the salvation of souls will be elected. You cannot be in charge of a nation if you don't care about the salvation of souls. It would be a great risk for the people subject to this individual. Now, I read for you from the Pope Pius XII. He spoke to the Italians in 1946 and 1948 on two different occasions. But in the one in 48, he spoke to the priests in Rome and told them this, because there was an election coming. It is your right and duty to the priests to draw the attention of the faithful to the extraordinary importance of the coming elections and to the moral responsibility which follows from it for all those who have the right to vote. In the present circumstances, it is strictly obligatory for whoever has the right, man or woman, to take part in the elections. He who abstains through indolence thereby commits a grave sin, a mortal offense. He told the Italians that if they did not vote for laziness or whatever other insufficient reason, they would commit a mortal sin. Because the communists were coming into Italy and trying to get power. The Pope said, if you do not vote to stop them, you will be in mortal sin. I'm no Pope, I have no power to tell you you are in mortal sin if you do not vote. But I repeat what the popes and bishops said in the past. And I will pass you these few words that I gathered so that you may understand clearly the duties that you have. It is understandable also that what we have learned from politics is just that we hate them. No? Because these people, who can trust them? They are all liars. No? We heard these things so many times. And the examples that they gave are terrible. But if Catholics took seriously their duty, Ireland would not be what it is today. And as I said, I apologize, I speak to you if you were part of the Free State, where men can get married and little children can be put to death in the womb of their mothers. Well, if Catholics took seriously their duties, those people who allowed these abominations would not have been in power. If the bishops throughout Ireland spoke clearly to their people, the Bishop of Dublin, the Archbishop of Armagh, all the bishops that you can imagine, and there's many, sent a letter to each parish requiring the parish priest, under pain of suspension, to read the letter and explain clearly the duties of the people to the people on Sunday Mass, Ireland would not be what it is today. Children would not be condemned to death in the womb of their mothers and deprived of heaven because, of course, not baptized, they will go to limbo. And certainly this is not in conformity with what we expressed just a few minutes ago, where the nation, the government, has to do everything to make sure that people go to heaven. To send little children to limbo is not something that the government can do. If Catholics took seriously their duties in social life, in civil society, Ireland would be a different place. Ireland would still be what it was before. The Catholic faith would be the predominant faith, of course, but also Catholic morals would be the directions, the laws that the entire nation would have followed. And people would have saved their souls. Because now, if the Irish were to follow the so-called laws that have been imposed on them recently, they would just damn themselves to hell by killing their own children and by marrying two men with each other and two women with each other, or a cat and a dog, or whatever they claim to be. All that sends people to hell. It is serious duty, because these people who are in charge and have been put in charge by people like you, they decide important matters. They decide about the education of our children. They decide what the children learn in school. If they were all Catholics, or at least they were following the natural law and the precepts of God and commandments, those children would be led to heaven, because they would receive the sacraments, they would be instructed in their faith, they would go to confession, they would go to communion. They would be taught in school, as the older people here were taught and instructed. And it would be given to them the opportunity and chance and grace to have an easy way to heaven. The hospitals would follow Catholic morals. So even in a time of a pandemic or anything similar to it, the Catholic priest would always be allowed to go and visit the sick. Because what matters is the soul and not the body. So even those in charge of the hospitals would have laws to follow to allow always, at any time, Catholic priests to reach the sick and the dying, to make sure that their souls would be saved. It doesn't matter whatever disease these people suffer, and the priest would not be afraid to get there, because at least they would be brought up themselves into the faith and know that their duty is mostly to save souls and not to make people happy in this world. And all that depends on the people that we elect and put in power. It does, because it's them who decide where the nation is going. So the duty is serious. The more the danger is close and greater. Everyone has to vote according to the dictates of his own conscience, of course. But your conscience has to be enlightened by the right principles. You must know what is right, what is wrong. In ancient times, the church would have told you, the bishop would have said, you can do this, you cannot do this. You cannot vote for these people. No question. You cannot vote for communists. No question. Or anyone who promotes immorality. No question. But now, your conscience has to be enlightened. You need to know. I don't know how many of you will vote, because depending on what privileges you have, but some of you might. Make sure that you know what you're going to do. Make sure that you're prepared. And you know what those people who are running for office, you must know what they say, what they promote, what they stand for. They may lie to you. That's their prerogative. Politicians. But at least you're able, you have time, sufficient time to find out what they stand for. Publicly, at least. So there is an obligation on each one of us to make sure that the right people get to the right place. And as I said, it's not me saying it, it's the popes, it's the bishops in Catholic countries like Poland, like Ireland, like Italy. They would have told their people what they could do, what they could not do. I'm not going through all these quotes, because if I print these papers for you, you will read them maybe next week or so. Theologians, they say the same thing. There is a moral obligation. So what kind of obligation is it? If you do not follow this obligation, what kind of sin do you commit? Venial or mortal sin? The Pope said mortal sin in that occasion. But it is agreement amongst the theologians that it could be a mortal sin in certain circumstances, not all the time. If you do not vote once, well, it's a venial sin. But if you have a habit of not voting, that becomes a mortal sin. If you vote for the wrong person, maybe once or in circumstances that is not so important, it's a venial sin. But if you vote for the wrong person when it is important and is going to change seriously some aspects of society, it will be a mortal sin. A mortal sin. It could be very, very serious matter. But now the problem is that we are facing situations where all those who run for office are unworthy. There might be some exception, of course. But I cannot give names. So you find out. I know some of them, so I have a relative control. I don't know them all. But imagine if they were all unworthy. It means that they're not sinners and such. Unworthy doesn't mean that they have a second wife or so. That's their own problem in conscience. Unworthy is that they do not promote what is right and what leads people to heaven. What should we do? Well, there is no obligation as such to vote for them. But again, according to the circumstances, we could vote for the one who is the less evil of all. If that would prevent a greater evil, we could vote in that case for the less one. But we have to make sure that we clarify to the whole world that if we have voted for that person, it is only to prevent that the other one may get the place, and we're in no way whatsoever we're supporting whatever evil that person is promoting. That has to be public. So these are just few rules that are given to you. Thus we may say that it is permitted to vote for unworthy candidates, that is, give material cooperation, if these are the only type of men on the ballot lists, in order to exclude more unworthy, in order to secure the election of one who is somewhat unworthy instead of voting for a good man whose defeat is certain. And when the list is mixed, containing both worthy and unworthy, so that the citizen can vote for the former only by voting for the latter at the same time. So these are some rules, moral rules and regulations. What you should ask a politician when they knock at your door: do you believe in hell? This is what you should ask the politician. And if he says yes, you have hope that he might do something right. They need to fear God and His judgment. We're all sinners, we all do mistakes and so on, of course, and we have confession for that. No problem. But the politician has to feel the hand of God behind him, on his shoulder. God is going to judge him or her on what he, she did for society to save the souls of those people who were subject to him or her. God will judge that. You cannot say, I'm a Catholic in my home, but once I have office, I'm in my office there, I am impartial. You have to be Catholic everywhere. things are Catholic or they are not. This threatening Jesus, the wood is made of, is Catholic wood, because it obeyed the laws of nature that God has put in it. This stand is a Catholic. Those chairs are Catholic, for as long as they obey the laws of God. Not just the people, the grass that grows in the field is Catholic grass. It means that it's obedient to God and follows every single commandment and rule that God has required. Politicians have to be Catholic. It doesn't mean they have to be perfect and sinless, but they have to be Catholic, subject to God and all the rules that the Church has established. That's the only way to make society perfect and work only for the salvation of souls. We need Catholic politicians. We need Catholic king, of course. That would be much easier. But if I were in charge, I would say we need a Catholic party, and each one of them, those people, men and women that work in it, they should be instructed deeply in the teaching of the Church, of society and their duties. And they should fear God. They should fear God. This is what you need to ask your politicians. Nobody cares, in fact, about the migrants, because they're using it to get the people attention. But that's not an issue. The migrants are not an issue. I'm a migrant. What do you want now? They throw me out? The politicians that are against migrants are going to throw me out? That's not a problem. The problem is that the politicians have lost principles, have lost the faith. And if you've lost the faith, you do not fear God, you end up working only for yourselves, for your own benefits. And this is what we have seen going on for years. So make sure, dear friends, that if you vote, because I don't know if you have the right now, because in the Free State, of course, we're going for local and European election, but here maybe not. But the time will come when you will have to vote for your own up here. Well, you have to apply these rules and principles. Make sure that you put your preference on those who want to save your souls. Simple as that. Simple as that. But your duty is serious, because your choices will have an effect not only on you and on all those who live in your own same society, but on your children and their children who will come later. Think again of all those children who lost their life in the womb of their mothers because some people decided to vote for individuals who are working for the destruction of society and not for the glory of God. Think of all those children who already have lost their life, and about all those children that will lose their life in the future, just because people voted in the wrong way. And of course, think of the bishops and their duties, and how strict God will be when He will see them in judgment, telling them that they should have known better, and on their hands they have the blood of so many thousand innocent children, because they forgot, they decided not to be strict enough in instructing their people. My friends, when time will come and you will have that power, apply these principles. Save your soul and make sure that you've done everything in your power to save the integrity of your own country. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.